Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're really digging into a fascinating dinosaur, Albalophosaurus.
Yes, quite a name, isn't it?
It is, and its story comes straight from the scientific papers, which, well, they give us a snapshot, but maybe one with some blurry edges.
That's often the case in paleontology. It's part of the excitement, really. And the name Albalophosaurus, it means white crest lizard.
Ah, right.
Yeah, and it ties directly to Japan's Mount Hakusan, where it was actually found. Kind of paints a picture, doesn't it?
It really does. So our goal today, our sort of mission, is to unpack what this creature was, but also try to see where it fits in the grand scheme of dinosaur evolution.
And that's where it gets particularly interesting, because its exact spot on the family tree still very much debated.
Okay, so where should we start? The discovery itself.
Makes sense. The story kicks off in 1997. That's when the first fossils were found by Yoshinori Kobayashi.
Okay, 1997.
Yeah, in the Kuwajima Formation. That's in a Hakusan Ishikawa prefecture, central Japan. But the actual naming, the description of the genus Albalophosaurus, that didn't happen until 2009.
Oh, 2009. That's, what, 12 years later?
Exactly. Ohashi and Barrett published the description then. It often takes quite a while, between finding something and really analyzing it, understanding it, and getting it published.
That really underscores the careful work involved. So what did Kobayashi find back then? What are we actually working with?
The main piece of evidence, the defining specimen, we call it the holotype, is cataloged as SBEI 176.
SBEI 176.
And it consists of cranial bones, so skull fragments, but they're from an incomplete skull, and it was disarticulated, kind of scattered.
Okay, so not a nice, perfect skull.
No, not at all. And there's also a left lower jaw included. The thinking is that all these bits likely came from just one individual, and probably a young one.
A juvenile? Oh, that adds another layer, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Trying to figure out the adult based on a youngster?
It definitely can. Juvenile features might not carry through perfectly to adulthood. It adds complexity to the interpretation.
Right. And let's revisit that name again. White crest lizard, Albalophosaurus, and the species name, Yamagukiorum. You said there's a story there.
Yes, definitely. The genus name Albalophosaurus, like we said, albus is for white, lophus for crest. It's a nod to Mount Hakusan, often snow-capped. It's white crest.
Oh, lovely.
And Yamagukiorum, the specific name that honors Ikkyo and Mikiko Yamaguchi.
Okay.
They were instrumental in discovering and preparing fossils at the site. So the name itself really grounds the dinosaur in its location and acknowledges the people who helped bring its story to light.
That's a great connection. Science, place, and people. Okay, so timing. When was Albalophosaurus around? Early Cretaceous, you said?
That's right, early Cretaceous period. But pinning down the exact age of the Kuwajima Formation where it was found, that's been a bit of a challenge for geologists.
Why is that?
Mostly because the rocks lack good marine index fossils. Those specific types of shells or marine organisms that are really useful for dating rock layers accurately across different locations.
Right. No easy time markers from the sea. So how did they estimate the age then?
Well, they looked at the rock layers underneath and on top of the Kuwajima Formation. Based on those, the initial estimate was probably sometime after the Berriasian age, but before the Barremian. So somewhere in the earlier part of the early Cretaceous.
Okay, a window within the early Cretaceous. Has that estimate been refined at all since then?
Yes, somewhat. More recent studies lean towards a slightly tighter window, suggesting maybe a Valanginian to Hauterivian age.
Valanginian to Hauterivian.
Okay. But it's important to stress that precise age is still not definitively locked down. It's still under investigation, really. A good example of science refining itself as more data comes in.
Absolutely. It's like focusing a slightly blurry picture over time. So let's move on to the big question. Where does it fit? Its classification. Okay, so starting broad. Domain Eukaryota, Kingdom Animalia, Phylum Chordata. Then we get to the dinosaurs, clade Dinosauria.
Right.
And within Dinosauria, Albalophosaurus belongs to the Ornithischia.
Ornithischia, the bird-hipped dinosaurs. Always a slightly confusing name since birds evolved from the other group, the Ceratopsian.
Exactly. It refers to the hip structure, which superficially looks bird-like. Anyway, within Ornithischia, Albalophosaurus is placed in the clade Marginocephalia.
Marginocephalia, margin-headed. That refers to the bony shelf at the back of the skull, right? Like in Triceratops.
Precisely. That group includes the ceratopsians, like Triceratops with their big frills, and also the pachycephalosaurs, the dome-headed, bone-headed dinosaurs.
Okay, so a potentially important group, and then we get down to the specifics.
Yes, genus Albalophosaurus and the single species we know, Albalophosaurus yamagukiorum.
So potentially an early member of this margin-headed group. But you mentioned earlier, this is where the debate really heats up. This is exactly where the uncertainty lies. Its phylogenetic placement, where it sits on that evolutionary tree, has been, well, controversial right from the start.
How so? What did the original description say?
The 2009 paper by Ohashi and Barrett did initially suggest it was a basal ceratopsian, meaning an early primitive member of the horned dinosaur lineage.
Okay, that sounds fairly straightforward. Why the uncertainty then?
Well, the problem was that classification was based mainly on one shared characteristic, and even that wasn't entirely clear-cut. Plus, the fossil itself, the holotype, it lacks the really obvious, unambiguous features you'd expect to see in a definite ceratopsian.
Ah, so the smoking gun wasn't really there.
Kind of, which led the original authors themselves to be quite cautious. They actually proposed placing it as Ceratopsian inserte sedis.
In the associates, that means of uncertain placement, right?
Exactly. So even the scientists who first described it flagged it as a bit of a mystery. They recognized the limitations of the fossil and the lack of definitive ceratopsian traits.
That's quite honest. And it naturally invites more research, I suppose.
It certainly did. Different teams started looking at the evidence, running their own analyses. For instance, in 2012, Hahn and colleagues published a study.
Okay, what did they find?
Their analysis put Albalophosaurus back into Ceratopsia, but they tried to place it more specifically. They suggested it was more derived, more advanced than very early forms like Yinlong or Chayangosaurus.
More advanced than those?
Yes, but still basal, or more primitive than Psittacosaurus and the later, more famous horned dinosaurs.
So they gave it a more specific branch on the Ceratopsian tree. Did that kind of settle things?
Not really, no.
Yeah.
Because the plot thickened again more recently. A 2024 study by Fonseca and colleagues really highlighted the ongoing uncertainty.
Oh, what did they find? More possibilities.
You could say that. Their analyses, which used different methods, actually gave several different possible positions for Albalophosaurus. Sometimes it came out as a basal ceratopsian, like before,
Okay.
but other times it grouped with the Pachycephalosaurs, the boneheads, as a basal member of that group.
Whoa, okay. That's quite different.
And wait, there's more. Another possibility they found was that it might be a sister taxon to Marginocephalia as a whole, meaning it branched off before the ceratopsians and Pachycephalosaurs split from each other.
Wow. So basal ceratopsian, basal pachycephalosaur, or maybe related to both, but splitting off early, that's quite a range.
It really is. It perfectly shows how dynamic this field is. New data, different ways of analyzing the data, it can really change the picture. The fact that it could be linked to either horned dinos or bone-headed dinos, or neither directly, just shows how tough it is working with incomplete fossils from so long ago.
It really drives home the challenge. And wasn't there also something about the teeth, suggesting maybe a link to Ornithopoda? Another group entirely?
Ah, yes, good point. The dental morphology, the shape of the teeth, does share some similarities with ornithopods. Think of dinosaurs like Iguanodon or Hadrosaurs.
So that adds another possibility to the mix. Or just confusion.
A bit of both, perhaps. It adds another layer of complexity. It might mean Albalophosaurus had this weird mix of features, maybe representing an early evolutionary stage before these groups became really distinct. Or it could be convergent evolution, evolving similar teeth independently. It makes pinning it down very difficult.
Okay, so let's try to summarize what we do feel pretty confident about. Albalophosaurus yamagukiorum, it's an ornithischian dinosaur from the early Cretaceous of Japan,
Correct.
known from skull and jaw bits of a likely juvenile.
That seems solid.
And its name means white crest lizard, tied to Mount Hakusan.
You got it. Those are the core facts. But its precise spot in the Marginocephalia, whether it's a ceratopsian, Pachycephalosaur, something else that's still very much an active scientific debate.
But even with all that uncertainty, it's still an important find, right? It tells us something.
Oh, absolutely. Definitely not just a confusing footnote. Even with fragmentary remains and taxonomic headaches, Albalophosaurus gives us vital clues about dinosaur diversity in Asia during the early Cretaceous. That part of the world and that time period still has lots of secrets.
So it highlights gaps in our knowledge.
Exactly. It shows that the early evolution of major groups like the Marginocephalia isn't fully mapped out yet. Every fossil, even one like this that raises more questions, adds a piece to that larger puzzle.
So, Albalophosaurus, Japan's white crest lizard. A tantalizing glimpse into the past, but it's membership card for the dinosaur family reunion. Still pending review by the scientists.
That's a good way to put it. It's science in progress, right? We observe, we analyze, we debate, we revise. The story of Albalophosaurus shows that perfectly.
Right.
And it makes you wonder, doesn't it? What will the next discovery reveal? Will some new fossil, or maybe a new analytical technique, finally settle where this enigmatic dinosaur belongs? That's the kind of question that keeps paleontologists searching.
And something for you, our listeners, to perhaps think about too. How tiny fragments can challenge and reshape our understanding of a world millions of years gone.